since we're limited for time, let's just dive into it. You know, when I first saw this topic, the thought that came to my mind was this is the classic Rumsfeldian problem, right? How do you kind of solve for the unknown unknowns? And before we jump into that, I just wanted to give the panel a chance to introduce themselves. So I guess, Joe, we'll start with you. Just go down the line.
Sure. My name is Joseph Adler. I lead product management at a startup called Interana. Before that, worked for a few years at LinkedIn. I've worked at Netflix. I've worked at other startups, and I've wrote a couple of books on data analysis.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Stoica, and I'm the CEO of Databricks. I'm also a faculty at UC Berkeley, where we build this open source big data analytics engines and different components. The most well-known is Spark, and we started a company to commercialize this open source platform.
So my name is Gunnar Carlsson. I'm the co-founder of Ayasdi, which is a company that spun out of a 10-year, 15-year research project in the math department at Stanford, based on the idea that data has shape, and the shape is an important aspect of what you want to understand about it.
I'm Sharmila, Mulligan, CEO and founder of ClearStory Data. We are in the data analysis space, solving a new problem around converging internal and external sources of data on the fly, so companies can drive very fast cycle analysis, specifically intraday, daily, weekly analysis. Our solution, in fact, is built on top of Spark, which is one of the key technologies that make it very, very fast to actually blend and process data at scale from many disparate sources.
So Sharmila, maybe keeping with you, I'm going to ask the whole panel to go through this. Can you give us an example of a place where a customer was using ClearStory to sort of find unknown?
Sure. So if you look back at the whole data analysis problem in the last generation, a lot of the solutions were designed around building dashboards and visualizations and charts around answering the question that a customer already has a hypothesis around. So, what does sales look like? What are the metrics? Certain KPIs. What we enable is to allow customers to bring together new sources of data on the fly and keep layering more data as you drive an exploration, with the idea of finding insights that are not necessarily known until you actually arrive at the insight. So literally answering new questions and discovering things around the unknown. And so to that end, some examples include in the CPG space, most CPG companies are trying to do what they call a last mile analysis in retail, where zip code by zip code by every grocery store and outlet that they sell their products through. They're trying to see what affects sales trends on an hour and 2-hour basis. So move from 2-week, 30-day, 60-day type of analysis to intraday and daily analysis, converging data from 12, 15 different sources that are refreshing every day. The whole problem is around specifically identifying times in the day where they spot like spikes in sales, times in the day where they may see some dip due to certain external trends or issues related to competitive pricing, competitive merchandising, etc. So it's in CPG, in retail, this is a very common problem where, given the competitive environment today, they have to be able to spot a sales opportunity or a threat on a very quick cycle. So literally daily analysis, weekly analysis, so they can actually take action faster versus actually taking action 30 days too late.
All right, so are you seeing speed as a key component in kind of the change that you're seeing in terms of analytics today versus kind of what your customers are using in the past?
Absolutely. I think there are two things. One is speed, and the speed, of course, is driven by just the fact that the market environment is so competitive for the consumer. And the other element of it is more sources of data. Okay. So I imagine everyone here on this panel, recognizes that there are more sources of data, new data types, and the scale is at levels that it wasn't before. So it's really both of the speed component combined with the diversity of the data from more sources.
Well, speed, that's a good way to jump into Databricks and Spark, right?
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. And let me give you another example. How many of you watch HBO Go? Okay, so actually behind the HBO Go, it's also a Spark application. So the management for video management and trying to maximize the quality of every video for HBO Go is done by this company Conviva, which is actually using a Spark solution. So what is using for? So whenever you start a video, actually you want to try to be very accurate and predict what will be the best bitrate you should start at and what will be the best content distribution network you should stream from. Okay, so this is the unknown. How do you do that? And fundamentally, the way you do it is looking in real time at all the information you have around and trying to find and to infer the quality of the new client based on the quality performance of the existing clients. Right? So if there is someone watching the same content, using the same device, using the same firmware, using the same distribution protocol, and being located in the same room as you, probably that would be a good indicator as what would be your quality. You are going to use the same kind of start, bitrate, and CDN. Of course, this never, it's very rare this to happen. So actually, it's a much more complicated inference process. It's a machine learning done in real time to try to predict the quality of any particular procedure. So that's one way you can use and maximize the quality, not only by reacting when something goes wrong, but by predicting what is the outcome when you make a decision. And this should happen in, of course, in seconds.
Right. So we have speed in real time, which is extreme speed.
And inference on a global data set.
So when I think about what Ayasdi does, Gunnar, you guys do another piece of this as well, and you guys are all pretty distinct. You guys are also trying to expose things that I might not even know to ask for.
That's correct, that's right. So we feel that one of the important inhibitors to understanding data very well is the absence of good representations of very complex data. We talk a lot about big data, but I think we would argue that complex is as big a deal as...
By the way, we went 8 minutes in the panel before we used the word big data. I think we deserve
so
some kind of special prize for that. I wasn't asked for applause, but I'll take it. I'm sorry, continue.
Anyway, I argued that complex data, even small data sets, can be complex. And so what we do is we are able to represent large or small complex data sets in a very flexible environment. So they're represented by networks. Each node in the network corresponds to collections of data points. And so it's actually a very compressed and interactive representation of the data in addition to being a visualization. And so the point is that what you're seeing in front of you is a shape, or what a user can see in front of him or her is a shape. And features in that shape, like loops and flares and so on, are often indicators of systematic phenomena going on.
So that kind of things I realized I should have asked you for this example earlier. I want to say last year, this is topical, last year during the NBA Finals, the Miami Heat used you guys to figure out what players to put on the floor.
That apparently is true. We had a brilliant intern who was a basketball fan. So he actually did an initial analysis on all the NBA players and found that there was a nice description of the set of positions, which was not just the standard 5, but actually sort of 13 different distinct positions. And so indeed, that same kind of analysis was used a bit by the Miami Heat. That's correct.
So I'm sorry, keep going. That was too good an analogy not to bring up in May.
So, but we feel that a lot of what's important here is the flexibility of the representation, that it can accept all kinds of data types and that it produces something that you can easily interact with. And so to give you an idea of a use case, we've worked with a large hospital system, which is dealing with the question of what they call care paths. That is to say, patterns of treatment. So these are a complex data type where it's actually just a list, timed list of the various interventions that they might perform. And so we built one of our representations of that, and what was then discovered was that actually there were lots of inconsistencies in the way that the same disease or the same disorder would be treated. And in fact, those depended on geographical aspects. So the system was actually fairly large, and they did things differently in one part of the state from what they did in another part of the state. And so just reconciling those things and starting to uniformize the way people and the physicians treat their patients produces large savings for them.
Terrific. Joe, you can't talk about Interana, but you have some interesting data stories from your past life. What's a good example in your past life you think of just in terms of sort of uncovering an unknown or just general problems you see with kind of solving these types of problems?
I think that one of the first problems to bring up, and that this is answering the unknown tends to be the fun part of a problem. This is the fun part of working with data, and I think that probably already today several people have made this point that this is a very small part of what you do as a data scientist, that a huge part of what you do in working with data is to go and clean your data and to load it into a system and to make it available, and then this part where you actually answer the unknown and find something interesting in it tends to be a small part of the problem. But the other thing that I've seen is that in organizations, people who work with data don't spend huge amounts of time to actually answer this problem. That they spend lots of time looking for exceptions. They spend a lot of time looking to make sure their numbers haven't changed. They look for confirmation that their hypotheses are correct. And it's rare that you find something unknown. And often it happens in crises such as a security issue or an operational issue that something really changes. That getting all the infrastructure in place to actually even detect that there's something that there might be something there that surprises you is unusual.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Well, actually, taking a step back from there, I guess I open this up to the panel. So when we think about, again, if we're staying away from the traditional big data stuff and just talking about scale, what are the challenges that you see in the customer base? Is it an issue just of, obviously the tooling is something we don't want to go off and solve, but is there a problem around the understanding of the data that a lot of teams are working with? For example, I'm just throwing one out there, but I'm leaving it open to you guys.
Yeah, what we see is when companies are trying to bring together many data sources, what we originally thought would be 5, 6 sources that they want to bring together. Almost everyone we work with today is bringing together 12, 14, 15 sources. And the reason for this is because in the past what they've done is they've had different business units and departments identify a certain source of data, and they look at that source of data in its silo. And that is resulting in a lot of missed information and missed insights. And to really understand the business holistically, they need to now combine data at a scale that I think wasn't thought of before. So literally, in terms of, I agree with Gunnar, it's the complexity and it's the number of sources that are coming together that are beyond, I think, what anyone would have expected. It's not so much about the volume. It can be smaller in volume, but just as complex. And it's the diversity of sources and number of sources. In the examples I mentioned earlier, CPG, retail, even what we see in financial services and healthcare, the number of sources we're seeing go up to 9, 10, 12, 14, 15. Because of the issue that they've had in the past, which is all of these have been siloed. They live in different repositories, they come from different external sources, and now we're at a point where bringing all this together and seeing things holistically and blending on the fly to get to that answer is very important.
I guess to ask as a follow-up to all of you guys, and this used to be your job, who is answering the unknown, right? Is it, we spend a lot of time at these conferences talking about these data scientists. I know your background. There aren't a lot of people who literally wrote a book for O'Reilly on R. If you need to hire people like you, it's awfully hard to do. Is it answering the unknown? Is it guys that formerly look like Joe, or is it your classic business analyst?
So I'll answer this a little bit and say that it's actually been very rare in my experience that I've had the need to actually open up the toolkit and apply interesting statistical methods, to build really fancy financial models, to use really sophisticated tools. That so much of the insight you get from looking at data comes from that first look, from counting things, from looking at averages, from just splitting a data set in logical ways. And there's a tendency that we have to complicate these problems and pick more complex solutions. But simply asking simple questions about data, trying to go through that initial summary and watching and getting processes in place to watch data over time give you so much insight and so much of an ability to to run a business better.
So then do you go after, I know your company's in stealth too, but do you see yourself talking more to data science types or more of the classic business analysts?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And again, if you need to look at the end-to-end problem you need to solve. So just to give you an example, is that in this case I was talking about, like the HBO Go and so forth, it turns out that when you develop that solution, the algorithms and so forth is not the biggest problem. Actually, the biggest problem is the data. You get some logs from all these kind of clients, and the data is inaccurate. What you measure is not exactly what you think you are measuring. Actually, the semantics over time, the semantics of some fields may change. You don't know about that. And finally, you may not have the data exactly you need, the most pertinent data for making the decision. So actually, if you look at that, I would say that like 70% of the time, it's actually trying to refine and understand the data. So having their experts of that particular field trying to understand and, so to speak, clean up the data and so forth, or iterate on what you need in order to provide the data that the algorithms will be effective in using it and making the decision. So I think that you have, if you think about, I think you need to all target not only data scientists, but the data engineers as well. And,
I mean, not to put you guys on the spot and potentially embarrass you in case any of your customers are here, but when you've talked to your customers, have you been surprised by their level of sophistication in terms of their understanding of what was actually going on in their business?
Yeah, so I think it's always, I think the answer there is that what we see, again, we don't have, from people we engage so far, and what ends up being is that actually in order to have a successful solution, we need domain experts, right? So, which understand again the problem, which understand again what they want to do and so forth. So the tools, and I think we are at the stage and we should focus on the tools who have the domain experts to solve their problems.
Yeah, I mean, I am surprised sometimes by the sophistication even of the business users. They know what they want to know sometimes. They know it in their bones, they know it in their gut. They don't know how to say it in terms of mathematical formulas.
They don't know what a SQL.
That's right. And so, I think it's sort of our job then to sort of do things in such a way that we can, take advantage of their intuition and the things that they want to know. And in particular, it's often a class of problems around the following. For example, any disease that you write down, most likely it's actually a family of sub-diseases that actually behave differently and be treated differently. So you need to understand that stratification. And that's an important class of problems. They know they have that problem, and we feel it's sort of our job to enable that. And I would just say also, you asked about the scale before. Yeah. I think what is true is that, yes, I think most customers believe that they have the biggest data set around. Many of them do. But in fact, what you find out at the end of the day when you transform it, it isn't as big as all that.
There's so many jokes I can make here. I'm just biting my tongue. We'll keep this PG. No, so we've talked a little bit about the organization. We've talked about speed. We've talked about diversity, and we've talked about real time. What haven't we talked about in the minute we have left? Does anyone?
Yeah, I'd like to add to this question about do they understand what they need and who is the buyer? So we think that the biggest problem is in the line of business where they're trying to really answer questions that they have the right intuition around, and I agree with Gunnar on that. They definitely understand that there is a problem in the business to be resolved, but they haven't been able to find solutions that make it intuitive enough for the line of business to actually be able to see a result or see an insight and know what to glean out of it. And the solutions of the past have been designed for a data-savvy person to be able to understand and glean a result, not for necessarily the line of business person that has a very different perspective and very different domain knowledge, and they look at things differently. And that is really where we think there's a big need in the market, is to make it easier for them to get to the kind of answers they're looking for, and they think differently from that perspective.
Terrific. Well, on that note, we're exactly on time, so I want to thank my panel, and thanks for the time today, guys.